Hello, my name is Eliza Monroe, and for as long as I can remember, I was just a guest in the family that raised me. Not a daughter, not a sister, just useful, just convenient. It all came to a head one afternoon in the middle of the hospital lobby. My mother, Diane, snatched a file out of a nurse's hands, tore my medical records into pieces, and let the pages scatter across the floor like confetti. Her face was twisted in fury. "You're letting your sister die," she screamed. And beside her, my father, Grant, stood silently, arms folded across his chest, jaw locked like a judge delivering a sentence. "You're a selfish mistake," he muttered. No emotion, just fact. That was their idea of love. That was the Monroe family. What they wanted was my liver. Not because it would save me, but because they thought it could save Harper, the daughter they adored, the one who used to laugh when I cried, the one who told everyone at school I was adopted before I even knew it myself, and the one who, even now, watched from behind hospital glass with a smug little smile on her face like she already knew how this would end. But here's what still haunts me. It wasn't just the shouting. It wasn't even the shame. It was the moment the doctor spoke 6 quiet words, and my mother buckled like a puppet whose strings had finally snapped. Because in that moment, the lie they'd told for decades started to unravel. I sat there, frozen. Shreds of my medical file drifted around my shoes. It didn't feel like a family emergency. It felt like a negotiation I hadn't agreed to. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about a liver. This was about control. The air turned sharp, suffocating. Like every breath I took was being borrowed, like I needed permission just to exist. My mother leaned over me, eyes wide with rehearsed grief. "You're going to just sit there?" she barked. "Harper is dying, Eliza. Dying. And you're doing nothing." People stared. A nurse paused her cart. A woman gripped her toddler tighter. A receptionist looked everywhere but at us. No one said anything, but I wasn't surprised. They never had. I bent down, not in guilt, but to collect the torn pages. They weren't just paper anymore. They were proof. Proof I'd need later. Proof that something had always been wrong here. And for the first time in a long time, my hands didn't shake. Diane stepped closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper, as if lowering the volume made her cruelty more sacred. "I didn't raise you to be this cold, this selfish. We gave you everything." I looked up at her, finally meeting her eyes without fear. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "You gave me exactly what you thought I owed you for." She blinked, just once. And in that moment, her outrage had nowhere to go. Then, right on cue, came the scream. "You're letting your sister die." And it echoed. I mean, really echoed. It bounced off the cold tile and high ceilings like a headline waiting to be printed. A security guard at the far end of the hallway turned his head. A nurse froze near the vending machines. Everyone heard it. But I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Because I'd seen this performance before. I knew all the acts, and I wasn't going to hand her an encore. Through the glass of room 212, Harper watched. Pale, propped up in bed, wires trailing from her arms, but still composed. Still smug. Her makeup was gone, but the smirk was intact, and when our eyes met, she didn't look scared. She looked triumphant. She didn't mouth a word. She didn't have to. Her gaze said everything. "I'm still the sun. You're still orbiting." I think I expected desperation, or maybe even a hint of pity. But what I got was satisfaction. And that did something inside me. It woke something up. Something that had been buried for years. I stood slowly, gathered the rest of the pages, and breathed in through my nose, steadying myself. Diane's voice lowered again, more tremble this time. "You'll regret this, Eliza," she said softly. "When she's gone, when this family is gone, you'll remember this moment and you'll hate yourself." I tilted my head, not mocking, just studying her. Funny, I said. I remember a lot of moments. None of them ever looked like family. And I turned. Not toward Harper, not toward Diane, not even toward the exit. I turned toward the nurse's station. Because somewhere deep in my gut, I finally saw it for what it was. They weren't trying to save Harper's life. They were trying to preserve their power over mine. I hadn't made it more than 10 steps past the nurse's station when I felt it. Not a hand. Not a voice. Just the dense, bitter gravity of my father. Grant Monroe didn't need to speak loudly. He never did. He could make you feel 2 inches tall with a single glance, and this time, he didn't even bother with that. He just stood there in the hallway, rigid, immovable, like the whole hospital owed him silence. His shadow stretched across the floor in front of me. "You're just a selfish mistake," he said. No fire in his voice, no drama, just final. Like it was something he'd believed for years and had finally run out of energy to pretend otherwise. I didn't ask what he meant. That would have implied I didn't already know. I let the words land like wet cement, heavy, spreading, but I didn't let them sink. Behind him, through the same glass window, Harper hadn't moved. That smirk was still carved across her face like a signature she left on every wound. I shifted to the side, carefully, deliberately, avoiding his shoulder as I passed. Once, that might have felt like defiance. Now, it just felt like protection. My space, my breath, my body. I kept walking, toward the family consultation lounge, but the memories caught up before I got there. They always do. My mind, like a disloyal archivist, started flipping through old files. Myrtle Beach, age 10. Harper got the window seat. I got stuck in the middle, between my parents and the drink cart. Diane told me, "You're too short to need the view." My 16th birthday? Harper got a used sedan. I got a navy cardigan 2 sizes too big. Grant said, "You don't go anywhere anyway." The UVA acceptance letter I never got to open because Harper spilled coffee on it before I could. She swore it was an accident. Diane believed her. "Be grateful," she said. That phrase again. Grateful. They always used it like a warning, like a leash. Even before I knew I was adopted, I felt it. The chill of being tolerated. The constant reminder that I was something they took in, not someone they loved. I didn't even realize I'd leaned against the wall until a nurse walked past and glanced at me. Her eyes met mine for half a second. She didn't stop, didn't ask, and I was grateful. Because I didn't want a witness to this moment. I needed it to belong to me. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. This time my hands were steady. I scrolled through my inbox until I found the subject line I knew by heart: National Donor Match Results. Confidential, dated 6 months ago. The same week I found out Harper was sick. I had taken the test on my own. No one asked me. No one pressured me. A part of me hoped that if I wasn't a match, the whole thing would just fade. I realize now how naive that hope really was. I tapped forward on the email and typed in 2 addresses, one for Dr. Rowan, my attending physician, the other for Jules Langley, my best friend, and my unofficial legal lifeline, who once told me over wine, "Always keep a paper trail, especially when people want your silence." Subject line: reconfirming non-compatibility for hospital records. And I wrote, "Please attach this to my patient file. Test results were received and previously disregarded." I hovered over the send button. Then I looked at the name at the bottom of the message. Eliza Monroe, not Harper's sister, not Diane's daughter, just me. I hit send, and I breathed. It wasn't just about the email. It was about what it meant. That I no longer owed them my body. That I no longer had to defend my refusal to sacrifice something they never had the right to demand. When I lifted my head, the hallway felt different. Lighter. Or maybe I was just finally stepping out from under the weight they'd put on me since the day I could walk. They were gone, probably whispering to staff, planting stories about how emotionally unstable I was. They'd done that before, but this time, I didn't care. For years, they had made me doubt myself, made me believe I was overreacting, made me believe I was broken. But I wasn't broken. I was just finally seeing the rules of their game, and I had no intention of playing it anymore. The further I walked from them, the clearer everything became. I found myself in one of the quiet corners of the hospital, just outside the Atrium Cafe. The kind of tucked-away bench meant for people too tired to fight and too proud to cry in front of strangers. I sat down, folder in my lap, heart like a stone wrapped in silk, heavy, but still soft enough to feel. That's when a nurse passed by. Young, kind eyes. Her steps slowed as she glanced at me. "You okay?" she asked softly. I didn't speak, didn't nod, didn't shake my head. Somehow she understood. She handed me a small paper cup of water and whispered, "You don't have to do anything you don't want to, even if they scream." I looked up. She wasn't guessing. She knew. "Thank you," I said, and my voice cracked, not because I was weak, but because someone finally spoke to me like I wasn't a pawn. She gave me a quiet nod and walked away. No questions, no judgment. Just grace. The water was cold. Real. I held on to that sensation like it was my last tether to truth. And then I heard them. Familiar footsteps, sharp heels and stiff dress shoes. Diane and Grant, returning like a storm, trying to retake a coastline that had already changed. Diane was flushed, holding a clipboard like it was a sacred text. She didn't need to say what it was. I already knew. Consent forms. "Where the hell have you been?" she hissed. Her voice, low and poisonous, curled around the hallway like smoke. I stood slowly and placed the cup on the bench beside me. I needed air. Grant didn't speak, just stared. His silence, as always, louder than words. Diane shoved the clipboard toward me. "Sign it." "No." Her face twisted. "Eliza, don't do this. She's your sister." I shook my head. "Number she's not. And you knew that before I did." Diane's hand trembled. "This isn't about DNA. It's about love, about decency." I stepped back, my voice firmer than it had ever been. "Number, it's always been about control." Grant reached out suddenly, gripping my forearm, not with violence, but with urgency, like he could still force me into submission with just his presence. Diane moved in again. "Sign it. For Harper. For your soul." That's when I snapped. Not with yelling. Not with drama. Just clarity. "Touch me again," I said, locking eyes with Grant, "and I will press charges." I lifted my voice, just enough to echo. "That clipboard won't protect you. I have proof now." Real proof. He let go. Almost instinctively. A nurse rounded the corner, sensing tension like heat off a stovetop. "Everything all right here?" she asked, voice calm but alert. "I'm leaving," I said quietly. Diane turned to the nurse, her voice pitched for pity. "She's abandoning her sister, making this about herself." The nurse blinked slowly and turned to me. "That's her decision. If she needs a patient advocate, we can arrange that. But you don't get to speak for her." That shut Diane up. At least, for the moment. I turned and walked away, slow, certain. Behind me, Diane began to sob. Not the kind born of grief, the kind born of performance. She thought she could still win the room. But I wasn't in her audience anymore. The hospital lobby felt colder when I returned, not because the temperature had changed, but because I had. I found a seat by the front windows, opened my phone, and without flinching, I forwarded everything, every medical record, every time-stamped email, every bit of proof I had, to Dr. Rowan, the hospital ethics board, legal department, and of course, Jules. At the bottom, I typed a single sentence. I didn't refuse. I was never eligible. They knew. They lied. They tried to force it. Then I turned off my phone, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Not to them. Not to anyone. This wasn't about defending who I was anymore. It was about documenting who they were. That night, I didn't sleep, not out of fear, out of clarity. I paced the hardwood floor of my little apartment near downtown Asheville, barely furnished, rented month to month, the kind of space that doesn't ask much of you. At 3 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table, legal pad in front of me, the hospital folder spread out like a war map. I wasn't their daughter. I was their contingency plan, their leverage, their just in case. But now, I had something they didn't expect. A paper trail. By 8:30 the next morning, I was back at Blue Ridge General, straight to the front desk, straight to the point. "I need to speak with Dr. Rowan," I said, privately. 15 minutes later, I was seated across from him in a small consultation room, no windows, just soft lights and quiet. "There's something new in your file," he began, tapping a few keys before turning the monitor toward me. A scanned document appeared on the screen. Medical power of attorney, Eliza Monroe. Dated 4 weeks ago. I frowned. "That's not my signature?" He didn't seem surprised. "It doesn't match the one on your intake forms or your donor test records, but it was submitted by a family member during Harper's last readmission." I already knew the name before he said it. "Your mother. Diane Monroe, of course." This wasn't incompetence. It was sabotage, a forged document used to imply I had given permission, maybe to fast-track a procedure, or maybe to skip the whole conversation entirely. "I want a printed copy," I said, "stamped and signed, and I want it entered into my file, officially." Dr. Rowan nodded. "Give me a few minutes." When he stepped out, I opened my phone again. The unread messages were still there, from Diane, from Grant, from Harper, all pointless now. I typed a quick text to Jules. She forged my signature. She had the results the whole time. I wasn't a match. I never was. Jules responded almost instantly. "Do you have proof?" I sent her the screenshot. "I'm having the hospital notarize it now." Her reply came just as fast. "Good. Get every page. We start protecting you now, not later." The door opened again. Dr. Rowan returned with a manila folder. He handed it to me, his expression measured but tense. "You'll find the notarized hospital statement, the original registry results, and a timestamp showing when Diane accessed them. It's all admissible, should that become necessary." "Thank you," I said. And I meant it. He paused, then added, "From a medical ethics standpoint, withholding this wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous." I didn't nod, didn't speak. I just stood and walked out, folder in hand, heartbeat steady. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't dread the room I was walking toward. I stopped just outside room 212, took a breath, counted to 2. Then I opened the door. Harper was propped up in bed, flipping lazily through a magazine she clearly wasn't reading. No oxygen tubes today, just an IV trailing from her arm like a leash she'd learned to glamorize. She looked up. No surprise, no shame, just that familiar flat stare, like she'd been expecting me to fold. "You knew," I said. I didn't need to raise my voice. The silence in the room did it for me. "You knew I wasn't a match. You saw the results." Still, she didn't say a word. "You let them drag me here, let them scream at me, let them break me in a hospital hallway while you sat here pretending to be too weak to intervene." Her fingers stopped turning the page. Still, no reply. "You knew." And finally she spoke. Calm, clipped, cold. "You showed up, didn't you?" I froze. Not because she surprised me, but because she didn't. That was Harper in one sentence, not a manipulator with claws, just one who knew how to wait. Let others scream, rage, destroy, while she reaped the rewards. "I didn't come for you," I said, stepping closer, not threatening, just intentional. "I came because a part of me needed to be sure I wasn't crazy, that what I felt growing up wasn't just in my head." She tilted her head back against the pillow and murmured, "You're still making this about yourself." And that's when I smiled. Not out of humor, out of clarity. I pulled the folder from under my arm and laid it gently on the bedside table. One by one, I laid the documents out in front of her. The donor test result, the forged consent form, the notarized hospital statement, the digital access log showing when Diane opened the email, my forwarded message to Dr. Rowan, the screenshot of Harper's last text to Diane, time-stamped. She glanced at them, quick, almost dismissive. But her eyes told me everything. She recognized them. Every one. "I didn't come for a fight," I said, gathering the pages back into the folder. "I came with receipts." Still no words. Just one long blink. I turned to leave. "You didn't win," I said at the doorway. "You just delayed the truth." And then I walked away, down the hall, past the vending machines, past the memories, past the guilt, past the girl I used to be. By the time I returned to the hospital's main floor, something had shifted. The air wasn't thick with illness anymore. It was polished, staged, the kind of hum that buzzes just before a camera goes live. I followed the murmurs to a glass-partitioned room off the west hallway. There it was, complete with folding chairs, a podium, a small banner hung neatly behind it. Community Gratitude Ceremony, Blue Ridge General Hospital. And there they were. Diane stood at the microphone wearing her best navy blazer, the one she saved for performances. Grant stood beside her, stiff and sculpted, like the statue of a man who'd never had a real thought in his life. On a screen next to them, Harper appeared via live stream from her room. Wrapped in a hospital blanket, oxygen tube delicately positioned under her nose, smiling faintly, serene, innocent, saintly. I slipped behind a pillar, out of frame, because I wasn't invited. I hadn't even been told this was happening. And yet, there they were, the family, picture perfect. "We are deeply grateful to the anonymous donor," Diane said, her voice shaking just enough to seem sincere. "Thanks to their generosity, our daughter Harper has a second chance at life." Anonymous. The word hit harder than I expected. This experience has reminded us of the strength of community and the power of unconditional love. No mention of me. Not a breath. Not a syllable. I was being erased. Live. On camera. Grant stepped forward, voice calm and calculated. "It's easy to point fingers during hardship, but true character shows in silence. We want to focus on healing now, not division." The screen behind them flipped to a slideshow. Harper holding Diane's hand. Grant sitting stoically at her bedside. Doctors smiling in the background. Unity. Sacrifice. Love. Except none of it was real, and I wasn't just cut out of the story, I was buried beneath it. I turned and walked down the side corridor, jaw clenched, stomach hollow. I waited near the side exit, just beyond the curtain of applause. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to dissolve, Diane appeared, phone in hand, chatting with a reporter like she hadn't just deleted a daughter. I stepped forward. "You knew I was here," I said. She didn't even blink. "You forfeited the right to be part of this family." Her cruelty wasn't even subtle anymore. I raised my phone, screen glowing with the live stream recording. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "Sending evidence," I said calmly. "You just erased me on camera. That matters." Before I could press send, her hand whipped forward, slapped the phone out of my grasp. It hit the floor with a loud, glass-shattering crack. A nurse nearby gasped. A volunteer stepped toward us. Diane stood over the broken screen, her chest heaving. "You want to ruin everything, don't you?" I crouched, picked up my phone gently, like it was a relic of truth. "No," I said, rising. "You already did that for me." A security guard was already on his way over, sensing something wrong. "Ma'am, are you all right?" I nodded and held up what remained of my phone. "Please log this as evidence. I'll be filing a restraining order today." Diane's face didn't crumple from guilt, it paled from exposure. The performance was over, and no one was clapping. The security guard looked at me. "Would you like me to escort you to administration?" "No," I said quietly. "I'll handle it." I turned, walked away, cradling my shattered phone like it was sacred. Because maybe it was. I stepped outside, back into the sunlight, sat on the same bench by the entrance, pulled out the hospital-issued tablet from my tote bag and logged into my backup email. Jules had already sent the edited livestream clip. File name, Eliza, erased, press, conf, blue.ridge.mp4. I typed a short message. They erased me on camera, but I'm about to engrave the truth in stone. I hit send. I didn't wait long. I walked back into Blue Ridge General with my chin lifted and my folder pressed firmly against my chest like armor. The press crowd had thinned. The folding chairs were half stacked. The banner was already halfway down. But I wasn't looking for closure. I was looking for truth. I took the elevator to the administrative floor. Dr. Rowan was already waiting in the hallway, holding a file thick enough to be final. "Thanks for coming up," he said. "I didn't want this buried in another inbox." He led me to a quiet consultation room. No windows, just walls meant to contain hard truths. He opened the folder slowly. "There's a genetic marker discrepancy," he said. "We ran the tests again. Twice. I didn't move, didn't blink. You're not biologically related to Harper," he said softly. "At all." 6 words. That was it. And yet the room tilted just enough to make me grab the edge of the chair. I let out a laugh. Not one of joy, but the sharp, unfiltered kind that escapes when your entire foundation cracks and you finally realize you weren't crazy. You were just right all along. "That explains everything," I whispered. Dr. Rowan didn't rush me, didn't look away. "Do you want all of this in print?" he asked. I nodded. "Print and digital. I want every copy, every timestamp, every record. I want the truth to leave a trail they can't set fire to." "You'll have it," he said. "Do you want to speak with someone?" "No," I replied, rising to my feet. "I'm going to speak to everyone." By the time I returned to the media room, the stage lights were still hot. A few reporters were packing up their gear, but the mics were still live. At the back of the room, Jules waited. Calm, ready, already recording. "You sure?" she asked. I gave a single nod. "More than I've ever been." I walked to the podium. No one stopped me. Not this time. I placed my folder down and looked into the room. Not full, but not empty either. Just enough. "I won't take much of your time," I said. "Just your attention." The room stilled. "My name is Eliza Monroe. You didn't hear that name during today's ceremony, but it matters." I held up the first paper. "This is a test result from the National Donor Registry, dated last October. It states that I am not a biological match to Harper Monroe." Flashes, whispers, pens scribbling. I held up another. "This is a forged consent form, submitted in my name, with my forged signature. It was filed by Diane Monroe." I lifted a third. "This is a notarized hospital statement confirming the timeline, that my results were accessed by Diane and hidden." One more. "This is a text message from Harper, proving she knew." Gasps now, murmurs. One camera shifted its lens to zoom in closer. I was adopted, and no one told me. They brought me here under the assumption that I could save someone who spent years watching me bleed and calling it drama. I paused. They didn't just lie. They didn't just erase me. They tried to turn my silence into consent. The room fell into that breathless space between impact and aftermath. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here because silence should never be used as a weapon, and I'm done being quiet." I stepped away from the microphone. Behind me, Diane fainted, collapsed mid-chair, the sound sharp against the floor. Grant stood, flustered, trying to speak, but the noise swallowed him. Someone called out, "Eliza, do Do you want justice or revenge? I turned back once. Neither, I said. I just want to never explain myself to them again. And I walked out. 1 week passed. The video from the press conference did what videos do in the digital age. It caught fire, clipped, reposted, debated. Headlines flooded the internet. Adopted daughter exposes forged consent in organ donation scandal. Blue Ridge General launches internal ethics probe. Eliza Monroe, silence no more. I didn't read the comments. I didn't need to. Diane was placed under medical watch after collapsing at the podium. Stress-induced, they said. Maybe it was real. Maybe it was just the final act in a drama she no longer controlled. Grant vanished from public view. No statement, no apology. That part felt fitting. Harper was discharged quietly. No photos, no captions, just silence. And for the first time in my life, my voice was louder than theirs. That morning, I sat on my small balcony with a chipped mug of coffee. The city of Asheville hummed gently beneath me. And for once, I didn't feel watched. I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel like someone else's afterthought. Just me. Midday, the hospital's legal office called. They confirmed what I already knew. My liver was never a viable match. Not marginal, not partial, not even close. Even if I had said yes, it wouldn't have mattered. It was never about saving her, I said into the phone, barely above a whisper. It was about controlling me. There was a pause on the other end. Then gently, we agree. When the call ended, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. I sat back in my chair and let out a breath I'd been holding since I was a child. Later that afternoon, I received a message from Harper. Can we meet? Just the two of us. Please. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed, Where? She replied, South Garden Path, 5 p.m. At 4:45, I walked to the hospital's garden. Spring leaves rustled above me. The sky was a soft gray blue, undecided about whether to cry or hold itself together. Harper was already there, sitting on a bench beneath the birch trees, no makeup, hoodie, hospital socks, smaller than I remembered. She looked up when I approached and gestured to the spot beside her. I didn't sit. She spoke first. They only kept you in case I needed something one day. Her voice was flat, factual, not cruel, not emotional, and somehow that made it worse. I always thought you knew, she added. I didn't, I said, but I always felt it. She nodded once, not defensively, just honestly. We didn't fight. There was nothing left to fight over. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. Good, I replied. Because I'm not offering it. Silence passed between us, not tense, just finished. But I hope you find something better than this, I said, because what they did to both of us doesn't deserve to follow us forever. She didn't cry. I hadn't expected her to. I turned and walked away. Some endings don't need a curtain. The next morning, I visited the county clerk's office. I filed paperwork for a legal name change. Eliza Monroe, not Harper's sister, not Diane's daughter. Not a placeholder, the name I chose, the one I built for myself. That afternoon, I wandered through downtown Asheville. Same streets, same coffee shops, same people. But I was not the same. I stopped outside a small print shop to sign the last form. As I stepped back onto the sidewalk, I whispered to myself, I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth. And the truth was always mine. They just tried to bury it under obligation. That night, after dinner, I sat at my desk. The sunlight faded across my paperwork. A breeze moved the edge of a forgotten envelope on the corner of the table. No return address. Postmark, Flagstaff, Arizona. Inside was a single piece of lined paper. Handwritten. Neat. Hi, Eliza. I saw your story. I'm adopted too. I didn't know I was allowed to say no either. Thank you for showing me it's okay to speak up. I'm 17. You gave me something I didn't know I was allowed to have. Choice. The no name, no contact info. Just truth. Folded gently. I held the letter for a long time. Not as evidence, but as proof of something else. Proof that pain, when spoken aloud, can become purpose. I didn't file it under evidence. I placed it in the drawer labeled keepsakes, because this wasn't a scar. It was the beginning of something else. Some families collapse under the weight of their lies, but I built mine, quietly, carefully, on the truth. And that was enough. Maybe more than enough. Because the hardest truth to accept is the one we've always suspected. That love can be conditional. That family can fail you, not with fists, not with fire, but with silence, with the kind that erases you. But silence doesn't have to last forever. Speaking up, even if your voice shakes, is the first step to healing. And for me, that step wasn't a speech, it wasn't a signature, it wasn't even a confrontation, it was a decision. To stop apologizing, to stop folding, to stop asking for permission to exist. Because here's what I know now, what I want every girl like me to know. You don't owe anyone your body. You don't owe anyone your silence. And you don't owe anyone the right to write your story for you. Not even the people who raised you. Not even the ones who called themselves family. Especially them. So to anyone listening, to anyone who's ever felt erased in their own home, to anyone who's ever been told that love must be earned by sacrifice, you are not alone, and your voice matters. My name is Eliza Monroe, and this was the first chapter I ever got to write for myself. Have you ever felt invisible in the place you were supposed to belong? Have you been forced to carry guilt that was never yours to bear? Share your story in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if Eliza's story moved you, subscribe for more true emotional stories just like this one, because your story matters, and one voice can change everything.